I found this amazing used dress. It had really good quality fabric and the print really cute. The problem was from the armhole down, it was literally a rectangle. It had absolutely no shape at all, and I knew that this could be improved using a pattern. Hi sewing friends, I'm Karina from liftingpinsandneedles.com. Welcome to this channel that is all about sewing, limitless sewing, and I have another thrift flip for you. Refashion, upcycle. I know you've been loving them and I've been loving them as well. When you are unpicking all the seams of a garment just to get the fabric, you can sort of tell what the process was to sew it just from the other way around, from the finish to the start. And this time I found a dress. I did remember to film it for you before tearing it apart. The dress has these beautiful polka dots. It's sort of neutral colors. The polka dots are sort of an off-white and the main color is it's a greenish, beigeish, khaki type color. I'm not sure how to really describe that type of color. I think it is a color that could work for me. I was immediately drawn to the print. That's what drew me in, and then I started seeing more details, up close photos of it. I asked the seller, what is the fabric? The fabric is a linen cotton blend. I knew it was going to be good. I searched the brand that it had there and I figured out it was a nice brand, good quality product. So I was pretty sure I was going to purchase a good quality piece that was pre-loved, used. And this one had absolutely no shape. It was sleeveless, but it had that type of sleeve that's just, it looks like a little opening, like a little slit right here, and then it just goes all the way down. It had zero shaping. It had a self fabric belt, which I suppose was the designer's idea for you to get yourself some shape. It wasn't that long, but I knew the base size was going to fit me, and I knew I could improve this with a pattern. I've done this before where I keep the original shoulder seams and the neckline finish, whether it's a collar or whatever's going on there. Sometimes I keep it, and I thought this was perfect. I could just unsew all those side seams, extend it on a table and place patterns on top to make sure that everything's going to be good and everything's going to fit. So the pattern I decided to use was the Melody Dolman. The Melody Dolman is the Feature Friday pattern for today, only today. I've made this one a few times, plenty of times, 7 actually, and I've used different types of fabrics. I've made 2 dresses out of it. I've made longer ones, shorter ones. It's designed to be a little longer than the standard because you're able to tie it up in the front. I know a lot of people like doing that, and some of mine have been longer so that I can do that. But then I think I usually don't do that, so I've made some a little shorter, and you'll see what types of fabrics I have. The Melody originally has a camp style collar with an integrated facing. It means the facing is already on the front piece. It's sort of extended this way and you just fold it back and then you sew your collar in there. I have a really popular video on my channel that shows you a shortcut on how to do a camp collar in a way that's just so much easier and stress-free. And it's by adding your own back facing. I know a lot of you have had success because I've gotten the feedback from there. So have a look at that one if you like camp collars and you just want to make your life a little easier. I also have a video showing you the original technique, the non-shortcut way, so have a look at those. That technique is universal for any camp collar, not just for the Melody Dolman. It's just the way I sew them whenever I sew one without the facing. As usual, you'll find my affiliate link in the description box of this video, also the previous content I have around it, and don't forget to use my code NEEDLES10 if you want an extra 10% off. The Melody Dolman is perfect for this thrift flip because it's a type of shirt that doesn't have extra details that are going to confuse you. There's no extra seams like a back yoke, dots, or extra type of seam lines, princess seams, whatnot. You know, it's just a front and a back. It's really easy to use these patterns to resize and reshape a garment that is just a box, just a rectangle. It's a really good shirt pattern that's going to work for something like this, where it's going to be stress-free. In this case, because I'm going to keep my original dress collar, I'm not going to have to do any of that. The original dress has a collar and collar stand, and I think that's fine. I can keep that. It's going to look absolutely fine, and I'll just have one step less to do when I put this dress together. I have filmed my process for you where you can see how it all came to be, how I extended it into a dress, because the Melody is a shirt, it's not a dress. I'm sure you'll enjoy seeing it, so let's hop into there. This is my original dress. It's super crumpled like that, and you can see it's got absolutely no shaping from underneath the sleeve. It's just basically a rectangle all the way down, but I love the fabric and I love the print. Those are the positives. It's already got a collar stand and a collar, so I'll be keeping that. I'll be keeping the shoulder seam. That self belt might be handy to add on a cuff, depends on how wide it is. And it's got really nice buttons I'm going to remove. I don't think those buttons add anything to the dress. I'm just going to put more discreet buttons. And it's a linen cotton blend. You can see the fabric there. It's got a lot of potential in the fabric and the original features that I plan to keep, but I want to give it some shaping under the sleeves to be more of a dolman style, where it's actually going to have some shape, because at the moment it has no shape. I very carefully unpicked the belt loops sewn onto the side seams, and this binding that finishes the armhole so messy. They sewed on the binding and then the side seam, and that is the bulkiest, most uncomfortable finish you could ever have on any garment. So I try not to ever do that with my sewing, but you can see that on ready to wear, you will see that. On the side seams, there are some vents. I'm not going to be using those. I'm going to unstitch that, but look at the finish on the hem there. They sewed the vent all the way down and then did a fold that's double. Super bulky. You get some raw edge in there, and oh my gosh, it's my biggest pet peeve in sewing. So these vents are going to go. I'm going to just carefully unsew all the side seam and just open up the whole dress. I am going to keep the shoulders sewn though, the original ones, and then place my pattern piece on top. What you see on the table is the front extended. This is the shoulder seam. Here is the collar area. All that's hanging off to the other side is the back, and I'm going to deal with that afterwards. What I've done to make sure everything's aligned is just pin the shoulder seams together so that they are one on top of each other, and same as this area here where the collar starts. I also pinned the center fronts all down the button placket so that it's very neat and it won't move. I've stretched out my fabric. I've aligned the center front along one of the lines of my cutting mat. I know the piece is correctly placed, both on top of each other, and they're exactly the same. This is the front piece of my Melody dolman. This is the type that has an integrated facing. So there's a line there that you would fold, and then the facing would already be there. So I've just folded that away because I don't need that. And then from the fold inwards, I drew a red line. That's where the buttonholes are going to be at 1/2 inch. That's really important because I need to align that to the buttonholes on this pattern so that I get everything correct. Another thing I've done is fold away the seam allowance of the shoulders. You can see the line there at 3/8. I've drawn that and I've folded that so it doesn't get in the way. I'm just going to give you a close-up of what I'm doing over here. Okay, so here you can see the shoulder seam of this dress. You can see it's not straight. It's got a slight curve, which is anatomic, but if I join this line to the end right there, I'll get a straight line. So that little curve there on the shoulder is not going to bother me. It does follow the shape of your body. You know, if you take into account how our body is, that curve is not a bad thing. So over here, we have our buttonhole marks. I can see them clearly and I measured it, and they're exactly 1/2 inch away from the folded edge, which is pretty standard for most patterns. And it's the same for the Melody dolman, which means I can place the pattern piece that's already been folded in right there on the fold of the fabric. So that makes it a lot easier. If the buttonholes had been further in or something, I would have made sure to align my buttonhole reference with the one on the dress. In this case, it's the same, so that makes it easier. So I'm just going to scoot this up, and I want this folded edge of the shoulder to match the seam line here. This is a different type of collar. It's got a collar stand and a collar, so it goes up higher than the camp collar. So this is what I really want to align. Keeping this aligned here, scooting this up until this corner matches the seam line of the shoulder seam right there. And then I want to just align everything down there to be on the center. And if you look this way, this folded edge is right there on the seam line here. And then we can see that we have that curve there. I'm not going to bother with that little curve. I'm going to leave it because the seam line there is matching and the seam line there is matching. Dolman sleeve of the Melody is a little longer here. That doesn't matter. What I wanted was to have that nice curve under the arm because the original shape of this dress is just a rectangle all the way down, pretty shapeless. This is how I'm going to align it. I'm just going to pin it nicely here. When we look at the rest, all I'm going to do now is take my friction pen and just draw. I have the original pattern piece for the shirt, which is long. Don't think this is not going to be long enough to be a dress. It'll be enough for me, at least just above the knee, borderline the shortest I can do. And then you can see this angle. What I do is I just take a ruler and just keep that angle going out A-lined, and I'm going to have just enough. I'm going to draw the outline here with a friction pen, keep going all the way down until I reach the bottom of the fabric. And then the dress already has a slight curve here, so I think I'm just going to keep that original curve. I'm not going to change that. And then I can always just change the shape once I've got it on and I can try it on. Maybe I can make it a little shorter here on the side and just curve it a little more. But that's something I'm going to worry about afterwards when I try on the dress. For now, I'm just going to draw the outline of what I'm going to cut out. So here you can see my dolman sleeve shape right there going out, and I've got the friction pen mark, and I'm just going to go ahead and cut that. But I'm not going to do that right now. I'm just going to pin everything, keep it in place. After drawing the line and knowing exactly what I'm going to cut out to give this shape, I'm just going to scoot this down and then just work on the back and do exactly the same thing. The back is going to be easier. It's just cut on the fold. I don't have a button placket to worry about. Here is the seam allowance drawn on the shoulder. I'm also going to fold that away, and I'm going to align it on the neckline in the same way. So I'll just do that and then I'll show you what it looks like. But I'm not going to cut everything until I have both pieces marked on. Here I have the back part of the dress. I've got the fold right there along one of the lines. I took my time to make it super, super neat. Aligned everything here on the sides, over there, and the shoulder seams, the collar. Same thing I did with the front, but this is easier. Before I show you what's going on over here, just let me extend the line of the dress. So I measured how much I extended it from my front, and from this curve, which is going to match the front, I want to have the same on the side seam, and that was 30 centimeters, which is 12 inches. I like to use a longer ruler like this because I can align it on this angle coming out. You know, the shirt is not a rectangle, it's not going there, it's going out like that, and I want to keep the same thing for the dress. So I'm just going to extend my line here with a friction pen, 12 inches, which is what I'm making this dress longer. And I'm going to use the full length that I have here. From here, I'm just going to do a curve that goes down like this so I can have a curved hem at the back of the dress. Doesn't have to be too exact, but I've got the curve right there. I can always fix that later. Okay, so that red line that you see there, that is actually how much shorter my dolman sleeve is going to be, shorter than the original pattern. I just don't have more fabric here. And I drew this to mimic what happened on the front. So my front was my reference. That is how much I was able to cut my front as. So I drew that on the back so that I can cut this out. Here on the back, I'm going to have a bit of excess fabric, but it doesn't matter because I didn't have that on the front. So this is going to be my sleeve piece so that this matches my front and I end up with the same length around the curve that I want to have here. On the top, I folded in my seam allowance. That's matching the seam here of the shoulder. This one's matching the seam of the shoulder. My center back is matching the fold of the fabric right there. So I'm happy everything up here is aligned. I'm just drawing what I'm going to cut really because I just find it easier to cut without the paper being here. This is so big and so bulky. So I'm going to draw my line here. Now I can just remove this paper from here. I know exactly where I'm going to cut. I have my line drawn there. I am going to put a few pins to just keep this together so it doesn't move when I cut it. And now I'll be able to cut the side seams for the front and the back without the paper getting in the way. With sturdy fabric like this, I'm quite happy to just use my scissors. Everything stays in place, nothing moves, very enjoyable. I tend to reserve my rotary cutter just for trickier fabrics. I've got my curved marked here, but I'm not going to cut it out. I'm just going to sew my dress and then fiddle with the hem at the end. That's nothing that I'll be concerned about at this point. So I have the side seam there. I'm going to have a shape now. Remember, this original dress was just basically from here down, it was just a rectangle. It had zero shaping. It fit me, but it just didn't look very good at all. So I would rather have the nice shaping here so it looks like something that was made for a person and it doesn't just look like a sack. Now I'm going to scoot the front over here. I've got the front drawn. I've got everything pinned here so that the fabric doesn't move, and I can do the same process. Okay, so that's done. Here are the sleeves. Now I'm going to calculate the length of this sleeve right here. I'm going to measure that 3/8 in, which is the seam allowance. So at the seam line, so that I know how much circumference the sleeve has. And that's because I want to try and make a cuff from this belt. It's got a fabric self-belt situation going on. And I'm sure if I unstitch it here and extend it, I can get a really nice cuff to add here. Remember, I've lost about 1 inch of the original length of the sleeve, but if I put a cuff on, then it'll still end up sort of at my upper arms and it won't be so short. So I'll definitely be using this little belt. Even though it's a tiny amount of fabric, I know it's going to be helpful. I've taken away the pins now, and all I need to do is align the side seams. So tell me how easy this is going to be. It's going to be so easy. So if you're doing this from scratch, you'd have to do the center, the placket, the facing, the collar, the shoulder seams. That's all done. I don't need to worry about that. I just need to worry about sewing these side seams. I need to worry about evening out the hem and figuring out the actual length I want it to be. And I'm gonna be doing a different finish here in the center front. The original one that had all the bulk just folded like this really is a huge pet peeve of mine. I really dislike that. It's super bulky. You get raw ends coming out here eventually. So I definitely don't want that. And I'll probably have to unsew part of this so I can get a neater finish. I can't use the original cuff pattern piece because my sleeve isn't the same anymore. It's shorter. It's probably got a different circumference than the original one because it's shorter. So I just need to know what this circumference is to make my cuff. Originally, the bottom hem here at the center front was just folded up like this twice and top stitched, and that gave a really, really bulky finish. I really dislike that. So I just unpicked everything and I serged all the bottom really neatly. And all I'm going to do on this original fold here is put a pin just to help me bring all of this, including that other fold, right sides together right here. That's why I had to unpick a good 4 inches of this, because this was top stitched all the way down. All I'm going to do is align this and sew this at the bottom. I'm going to use a really small hem allowance here because the dress, I don't want it to be that short. So I'm just going to sew at 3/8 here, which is the hem allowance I'm going to use for the dress. So now the center front is going to have such a nicer finish. This is the way I like to finish all of my things. So it's nice and clean, it's bulk free. The hem comes from behind this area right there. And all I'm going to do here is finish this up. I don't have an exact matching color to finish top stitching that again. So I'm just going to pull that knot that and then just sort of do a really invisible hand sew right there to keep it in place. And I'll also be hand sewing the hem. I think there's nothing worse than a contrasting thread going through a polka dot. I really don't want that. I seam ripped this belt, so I have it all extended and I have enough width to cut out a cuff. If you saw a previous video I made on shaped cuffs, this is the one that I'm using. It's the one that has an angle going in, and that's because I'm going to use this cuff just to extend the sleeve. I'm not going to be folding that cuff up. I'm going to cut it out from here and just sew that onto the end of my dolman sleeves. My dolman sleeves ended up a little shorter than the original pattern, but that's fine. This is going to make them a bit longer. Here is my refashioned Melody dolman. So I have the original shape and everything of the dolman sleeve, the circumference, the feet, the shape of this shirt dress is actually the Melody dolman, just made longer. The original you saw from here was just a box straight down. It had absolutely no shaping. It fit me pretty awful. It fit me around here, but then the rest was just, it was a literal sack, basically, because the sleeve on this dolman came out a little shorter than the original. I added on a little cuff. Now, this is a type of cuff that has a little type of dot situation here. It has shaping on the bottom, so it looks a little more anatomic. And I have shown you a video about that already, the previous video, how to make a small change to your cuffs, whether you just want one to extend it like this one, or you want one that you want to fold up. So it's a little different, super easy tweak that you can do to any cuff. You can add this on to any pattern that you just want to add a little extra length to. And I know a lot of people want their dolman sleeves to be a little longer. So have a look at that one if you've missed it. It's really practical. I have the original shoulder seam as you saw. I have my collar and collar stand that was original from the dress, so that was easy. My button placket here was the one that was on the dress, so that was easy. Sewing this up took basically no time at all, and I was really confident the result was going to be amazing because I was using a pattern I know fits me and I've made so many other times. You saw how I finished my center fronts. It's the way I do all of my dresses and shirts and blazers and jackets and everything. I think it's much neater and you get a really clean finish there without the bulk of folding it up. I used a small hem allowance because you see that the dress is sort of short and I did that by hand. I didn't want to have any thread going through the polka dots right there. I think that would have ruined the look for me. I just know it looks so smooth and so clean in the end. This dress originally had these rectangle type of buttons that I took out and I put on a harmony blouse that I made a few weeks ago, a white one. And that was a sort of basic top, and I added a fake placket and those special buttons just to elevate the basic white tank into something nicer. And those rectangle buttons were just getting lost in the polka dots here, so I knew that, you know, I could just remove them. These are the buttons I chose there. Now, the thing about using already pre-made buttonholes, because it's a refashion, these buttonholes were tiny because those other buttons were tiny. And so these buttons were not going to fit through the buttonhole. There was no way I wanted to make it larger. That would have been really messy and it just would have ruined the dress. So I just decided to sew the buttons through the buttonhole permanently through the placket. So I can't take the buttons out. I really can't take the buttons out, so they're there to stay permanently. I have enough space over here to just pull it on over my head, and I have enough ease at the waist and the hips and everywhere over the bust to just pull it on over my head and have my shirt dress on without needing to unbutton and button, because these buttons, the size of them, they were just not going to fit. And I thought having tiny buttons on a shirt dress made absolutely no sense to me. I know they make sense on a shirt, but on a dress I just think buttons should be a little larger. The other thing I can't control with a refashion is the positioning of these. My bust height is in a place where I don't have a button, and I knew I was going to have gaping. So from the wrong side, I just sewed the button placket down together, like permanently as well, so I wouldn't have any gaping. No one's ever going to know. If I'd made this from scratch, I would have placed a button exactly at my bust height, and I would have used a smaller space between buttons. I usually do use a pretty small space. These have a larger distance between them. So over here, I just did a tiny invisible slip stitch that holds this placket onto that placket. It's never going to be seen on the outside because it's just on the internal layers. It's basically like I sewed the dress closed all the way down to the bottom permanently. So I'm not going to have any gaping in my buttons ever. And I'm not going to be worried about buttons opening up. And I can just really enjoy it and be relaxed and stress-free that I'm wearing it, and nothing's going to show from the sides or anything like that. Definitely the bust area was a problem. There was going to be gaping there 100%. For styling, when I was trying on different things, I brought out a belt, and if this dress was a little longer it would be an option but because the dress is short already as it is, if I belt it, it turns into a mini dress. I don't feel comfortable in such a short dress, so no belt, just loose. It's not super boxy. I think it fits fine. It's comfortable. It has enough ease everywhere. So let's see it styled a few ways. The only thing I'm changing here are the bags and the footwear, where I could dress it up and dress it down. Here is my Melody dolman lengthened into a shirt dress. I really love it. So I've paired it with red accessories here just to give the outfit a little bit of me. I did use a thrifted dress that had basically no shape, so the fit and the shape here is of the Melody, just lengthened about 12 inches, and I really love the tan polka dots. There's a nice comfy amount of ease at the waist and hips, and in essence I could belt this, but because the original dress is short enough, I really can't put a belt on it and end up with a mini dress, so I'm just wearing it loose and comfortable like it is. I love the buttons. I replaced the original buttons from the dress. They just didn't match the polka dots, and I think this one is a little more discreet. I kept the collar stand and collar from the original dress, and it was a really fun, enjoyable make. Knowing that the Melody fits me, I've made it so many times, was just a no-brainer. And on the little short dolman sleeve, it ended up shorter than the original, and I added a cuff that extends the length right there. It is a shaped cuff, it's not a rectangle, and it fits really, really well. I really love the extra length that it gives you. I love the combination of colors for polka dots here, which is sort of unusual. Here I've just toned it down. I've just matched the color of the dots to the shoes and the bag, a bit of an off-white. I don't think I want to wear a layer on top because of the loose nature of the fit here, and because I can't really belt it. As I said, if I belted it, it would end up being just way too short for me, and this is as short as I can go. Working with a thrifted dress meant I had no more fabric there, so this was the length I was working with. I'm really comfortable with wearing looser items like this. I don't need everything to be cinched in at the waist, you know. And here's the same dress, just a little more casual with some white tennis shoes, leather. I love them. They're so comfortable and they're so pretty. You can't see the details up close, but they are very pretty tennis shoes. And I have a bag that has the same type of detail that the shoes have on the side. It's just a type of work on the leather, and I think this goes really well, and I could be very casual and feel really good that I'm wearing a pretty dress, but I'm also super comfortable in my loose dress. I love the melody for a refashion like this. It was really easy to place the pattern pieces on top and get the fit that I'm really accustomed to, and it was amazing to give this shapeless dress the nice fit and shape that I wanted for my body. I'm super happy with this one. I'm usually very happy with my thrift flips, but I'm especially happy with this one because it's hard for me to find the polka dot that I like. A lot of the ones I see, the polka dots are so tiny that from far away you can't see them, or they're just very big. And I like this size of polka dot. These have about a 3/8 of an inch diameter right there. That's a nice size for the dot, and I think this combination is more unique. You usually find black and white or navy and white, but to find it in a color like this was just so good. I was just so happy to find it, and I'm gonna love this dress. I have nothing else like it, and it was a delight to make. Using the pattern, the Melody Dolman, made the process so easy, and I knew the fit was gonna be spot on. Don't forget to check out the Melody Dolman, only $5 today. It's a great pattern. I've made it a bunch of times. If you use the back-facing technique, it can make it super, super, super easy. And then if you want to do the real camp collar technique, that's just going to take you a little bit longer, but you can do either or. You can grow into the real technique if you want to a little later, but you can get your first shirt done and it's amazing. That's all from me. Have an amazing weekend, and I'll see you again on this channel for more sewing. Bye.